Joining us from Rotoport. Okay, I think we should look to get going. Welcome everybody to our 7th edition of Let's Connect Web Series. We are so excited to have you join us today. You could have been spending your time doing something else, but instead you decided to come here and have a conversation with us around imposter syndrome. So we are very, very excited to have you join. I'm just going to go through a couple of things. The first one is housekeeping. This is a webinar, so for all intents and purposes, how we engage is through the Q&A as well as through the comments. We are spending time having the conversation, so we'll definitely make sure to have a look at the comment section and address the issues as they arise, or share your thoughts as they arise. And then at the end, we will carve out time to have a conversation on the Q&As that come up during the sessions. Please feel free to share and also to ask questions that you would like our panelists to talk to. We will also, during the session, have a poll that we are asking you to comment on topics you would like to hear about going into the future. We want to make sure that this platform is fit for purpose for you, as well as for people who are joining the webinar series. Okay, so I'd also like to thank our sponsors. We have a few. We have Biotech Africa for hosting us on this wonderful platform and allowing us to reach you across the board and ensure that we are engaging on an ongoing basis. We also have Ladybug Consulting for the domain. So you can reach us at info@letsconnect.co.za, pardon me. And then we have a massive panel of people who give of their time to ensure that the flyers are right, to ensure that our content is flighted properly, and we have people sitting behind the scenes to make sure that the series is running effortlessly and smoothly. So thank you so much for joining us. Right, before we continue, I would like to take the time for each one of our panelists to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about who they are, what gets them excited and riled up, as well as what they're going to be doing into their future. Shola, we'll start with you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Shola Bumi. I'm from Lagos, Nigeria, live in Lagos, Nigeria. I am currently working in the utility space. I work for a company called Viathan Engineering. We are trying to solve the power problem in Nigeria one day at a time. I'm passionate about infrastructure development. I believe that Africa needs that. I'm also an aviation enthusiast. So in my former life, I used to be in aviation before I moved to the utility space, so all infrastructure. I'm also have a big keen interest in policy development. I think it's an African thing. But yes, that's it about me. I'm excited to be here and I can't wait to dig into this conversation. Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you, Shola. Then we are moving over to myself. Hi, everybody. My name is Kanye Mdluli. I am a coach and a passionate one at that. I'm currently a projects director at Due Corporate Education, where I work with exceptional teams to bring bespoke programs that are meant to develop and grow corporate individuals to life. I'm also the founding member of Ladybug Consulting and Project, where I work as a seasoned program professional together with the team to bring projects to life. Also a seasoned leadership and career coach. And I feel very strongly that my responsibility is to guide those who haven't had the opportunity in their lives to be the best version of themselves. Wealth of experience in management consulting. I know I look 20, but you can add a couple of decades to that. And that's my real age. And I have been at many organizations in consulting, including McKinsey and the Resolve Group, which is now part of Ernst & Young. And I spent some time at Discovery, helping people in how to protect their lives. And I do have some qualifications, business qualifications, that I use every day in trying to help people realize their dreams. That's me. And then next we go over to Toa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Toela Mukosa, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the CEO of a IT consulting and business firm based in Fourways, Johannesburg, South Africa. Our key focus is on helping organizations with their digital transformation journeys, as well as data analytics and business intelligence. I'm a mom of 3 children, and I'm married, and I'm passionate about women in tech, also passionate about helping people navigate the challenges that they currently face in the workplace, hence why I'm part of this webinar series. And I just want to say thanks so much for joining us today. Glad you could make it.
And then last but not least, our most important role player. Tonight, we are hearing from the author extraordinaire, seasoned coach, Carice Anderson. Carice, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kanye and Shola and Toela. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to your community. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Carice Anderson. As Kanye has mentioned, I have written a book called Intelligence Isn't Enough. So everybody go grab a copy. The subtitle of it is A Black Professional's Guide to Thriving in the Workplace. I am currently a senior principal at a company called Korn Ferry. So Korn Ferry is an organizational strategy consulting firm. We're all over the world. And I work out of the Johannesburg, South Africa office, where I've been based for the last almost 10 years. So that's kind of my day job. My night job is promoting my book and trying to get as many young people to read the book. So this is what I do in the evenings, is trying to have really interesting conversations with very smart people about career and purpose and relationships and impact. And I will leave it at that. Thanks thanks for putting my humble brag pictures up, ladies. I appreciate it.
Of course, Carice. Do you guys see where Carice is? Hey, look at that. She's doing phenomenally well. Her book is selling like hotcakes. Please do support. I've literally had unsolicited feedback, Carice, about how amazing the book is. And so we look forward to more people hearing about you and today's conversation.
I worked really hard on it, so I'm so glad to hear that the people are getting some value out of it for sure.
No, definitely. So tonight, ladies, we're talking imposter syndrome. That is such, I think, a big conversation. We'll try and get through as much as we can in an hour. But I would love for you to share as much of your personal experience as you can with us. And the first question, I'm going to ask all of you to briefly share, how does one recognize that they're experiencing imposter syndrome? What are some of the red flags or telltale signs? And we'll start with you, Carice.
Sure. So, I mean, I think when you hear the term imposter syndrome, I think it's important that we define it, first of all. So it really has 2 elements. It has when you feel like a fraud and you're worried that you're going to be discovered. That's the first part. And the second part is that you really externalize your successes. So I think some of the telltale signs, to directly answer your question, are, do you use any of the phrases I'm about to say now, right? Oh, I just got lucky. Oh, anyone can do that. Oh, I was just in the right place at the right time. Oh, I had a lot of help. Oh, those people, they don't mean what they're saying. They're just being nice. You often find it hard to accept compliments. You dismiss those compliments. You downplay what people are telling you. And I'll say another sign is you use minimizing language. So you'll say things like, oh, I was just thinking, or I'm kind of thinking, or I'm pretty sure. So that kind of language, I think, coupled with feeling like a fraud, I think those are signs that you're suffering from imposter syndrome.
Right. Okay. Interesting perspective. Shola, what are your thoughts? How do you recognize you are experiencing imposter syndrome?
Same as Carrie. So a lot of the thing, the phrases Carrie's mentioned, I think that everyone who goes through that imposter syndrome bit, they also feel that way. For me, I think it's to just to pull it in. It's when you cringe when you get compliments. So that cringe bit, but like me, no, it can't be me. Where you can just accept that you've done a good job and people are complimenting you. That is a big telltale sign. Again, I think I've mentioned it before, but where you can't you're underestimating your achievements. So a good example will be in your CV. So I did this, that, and then you're it's not bragging, it's what you've done, but then you're minimizing it by then saying I was part of a team that did this, my team, because you just can't believe that you did it by yourself, or you carried the weight that got to the end point of what that project was, or whatever it was. I think that's one of the very big signs as well. And just thinking that you got lucky, or the job, the task was not a big deal. It was easy, yeah. And someone says, "Oh, that meeting you did very well," and I'm like, that was basic. Those are the telltale signs are out. But that's how I identify that the imposter syndrome is kicking in, or rearing his head, basically.
Right. And Toa, I'm going to ask the question slightly differently to you. How do you recognize it in somebody else when you are watching them and almost observing and thinking, what's going on there?
So I will add on to what the ladies before me have said, and it really is about self-doubt and attributing your success to external factors. So not internalizing it and say, I made CEO because I'm really good at what I do. It's like, I just got lucky, you know, the interview, the lady must have liked me. So when people use that such language, another thing I want to say is when you're a perfectionist or when the person is a procrastinator. So you'll find that you'll be given a task, and because you've got this self-doubt of your skills, you take long in trying to produce an output because you're trying to get it into this perfect state, because you don't want people to think that you don't know what you're doing, you're a fraud. And you're like, oh, it's just a minute, any day, they're just gonna find out that I don't belong here. So if I see that someone is a perfectionist in what they do, you know, and instead of thinking of the impact, they're thinking of the quality, because the quality is a judgment of me and not necessarily of the bigger picture to say I need to make an impact in what I'm doing. So that's one way you can identify someone may have imposter syndrome. Another thing is the fear of failure. A lot of people, and that's the thing about imposter syndrome, and I think we'll get into it later. A lot of us have faced it at one point in our careers. And one thing is the fear of failure. And it comes in items where you need to be the best. And but the thing is, you're like, I'm here, but am I really the best? And I have to do very well, because if I fail, then everyone will find out that I'm an imposter, basically. So it's almost like you've got this fear of failure, and someone who's a perfectionist and someone who procrastinates in the work that they do. So those are the three that I'll go for now.
Okay, sure. That's interesting, because it sounds like there are clusters of things that are red flags for experiencing imposter syndrome. And I suspect a lot of people, as we saw in the title, like a lot of professionals experience it. And so then my next question, and it's linked to a few comments that we're seeing on our chat room. around, is it a bad thing? Could it be something you grew up with? Is it behavior that's learned? Is it bad being a perfectionist? You know, that sort of thing. So Carissa, I'm going to ask you, is it a bad thing if you experience imposter syndrome?
I think it's a bad thing because of the shame that comes along with it. So kind of to Tuela's point around perfectionism, you know, if you don't do something flawlessly, you feel a great deal of shame, you know, because it's not perfect. I just don't think to be operating from a place of shame is healthy. You know, I mean, and I think there are other kinds of imposter syndromes too, right? There's, you know, the person who feels like they have to know everything. So if the person doesn't know everything, they feel like a failure, they feel shame. If the person has to ask for help, they feel like, oh, I should be able to do this all by myself. I'm ashamed because now I've had to ask for help. Somebody who thinks, oh, I'm supposed to do everything with ease and speed. I'm supposed to be able to juggle 55 things and I can't. You know, so I think, you know, it's just not healthy to be operating from that place of shame. And I think, you know, even for myself, I mean, I think from a little kid, I was always obsessed with perfection, to be honest. And I don't think it's healthy. You know, like if I got a 95 on a test, I wasn't happy about the 95. I was mad about the 5 points I didn't get. And I sat there and beat myself up and, you know, why couldn't I have gotten these 5 right too? And that's crazy. Like that is sick. You know what I mean? Because if somebody gave you 95 out of 100 rands, you would not be asking about that other 5 rands. You would just run with that 95. But I just, you know, for me, I'm like, why was I so obsessed with the 5? And, you know, they say that, you know, kind of, I think somebody's question in the chat is kind of like, where does this come from? I mean, some of it they say is personality driven. Maybe we just hit the earth with some of those tendencies. Some of it, I think, is how we were raised in our families and what was, you know, approved and celebrated in our families. You know, some of it, I think, is based on the environment. You know, if you are the only Black female in a room full of white men, you might be feeling like, do I deserve to be here? You know what I mean? And that's based purely off of that environment, because you're thinking, well, am I going to be the one that's going to be successful in this space when nobody else has been? And then I think there's also an element of discrimination. You know, when you've been told as a woman, as a Black person, whatever else, you know, underrepresented group you're part of, that you're not the mainstream, that also plays on your psyche. You know, and so I think imposter syndrome can come from any, you know, one of those different areas. And we just have to, you know, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but we have to work on that mindset. I'm sorry. I'll stop. I promise. I'm done.
No, you must stop. I'm curious. I'm going to be controversial here. I'm curious.
Yeah.
If you're feeling comfortable where you are, if you're feeling like I've got this, and you don't experience imposter syndrome, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? You know, should you be feeling like you've arrived? I had this conversation with someone else who says, actually, imposter syndrome is not a bad thing. You should never feel like you've got this. You should be insecure and pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelope at all costs. What are your thoughts, Toa?
My thought on that point is you can use it to your benefit. So and how is being able to identify that you've got imposter syndrome and being able to do something about it. So if I give an example, it's let's say you're sitting in a meeting and all these acronyms are flying across the table, ROA, ABC, EFG, and you have no idea what those things are all about. And you're busy writing them down and you're like, oh, before anyone finds out that I don't know what it means, I'll Google this when I get back to my desk. Okay. The thing is, if you realize that, okay, fine, I don't know what it means, but I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to go back and learn what it means. Then you're better in yourself. So the thing is, if you're able to say, oh, I hope they don't find out that I don't know what ROA means. And the reason why I'm using this one is at a bank, everyone was using ROA. I'm like, what the hell is ROA? And it's rest of Africa. And I was like, oh, okay. I only knew that afterwards. So it's one of those things. I think if you're aware that, okay, this feeling that I'm having, I'm doubting myself, why don't I know what ROA is, really beating up myself. I should recognize that, okay, this is imposter syndrome and it's okay that I don't know, but what I should do is go and learn and, and then I will know what it means. So I think imposter syndrome can help us, learn and get better, but it becomes a negative when it's always consuming you, and it really then starts affecting your self-esteem, and you're not putting yourself out there because you think like, if I put myself out there, they'll figure out that I'm a fraud. So I think you need to be aware of it, and I think like this webinar will help us unpack and know how to identify imposter syndrome.
Right. So, I mean, I'm curious. Have any of you personally experienced imposter syndrome? And does anyone want to share what that looked like and how they overcame it?
I'll go. So for me, I think that I was one of those people that always put all my achievements down to luck or someone else, external factors, but it was always, oh, it was easy, it was luck, or the team. I was part of the team. In fact, yeah, I did that a lot. And I found that I was questioning my capabilities, because so I was working in a place where I was the youngest and it was full of older people, and quite much older people. I don't know how aviation is in South Africa and Nigeria. Aviation was always older people, and then yes. So basically, I then kept thinking. So you're getting all this feedback and remarks that you did like, maybe these people don't know what's young and what's cool, and they're just speaking out of what they thought was cool in back in the day. But it went on for a long time, and I kept thinking, I'm not that good, or these people are just not that good. And I changed jobs just to be able to solve that. And I moved to a corporate international company where it's more competitive, and it's more just to be able to validate myself. I was seeking validation. I would say that I was seeking validation. And right off the bat, I realized that it wasn't such a big deal. I was just beating myself up for nothing. And that's what that was my experience. And it took me talking to someone to realize that it's not about your job. It's just you beating yourself up and not just being able to accept that you're doing a good job, and moving jobs and realizing that it was the same, okay, getting good feedback and being able to manage that. And so I think growth, how did you grow? As you grow in your career, as you get better, as you own your craft, you shed imposter syndrome. And that doesn't mean it doesn't come up every now and then where you're in a meeting and someone is saying ROA and you've never heard it. It will creep up. You will get all those little times that you're worried about it. But and again, is it a bad thing, by the way? Sorry, I just have to get back to that. Is it a bad thing? I'll say that it's a distortion of reality. So where your reality is distorted, that is a bad thing. Yeah, it could limit your career advancement. I know on here we're all about career advancement, so that could limit your career advancement. But it could always also be a catalyst for you to stay hungry, to look for the next challenge, as long as you're not letting you weigh down and you're causing anxiety or depression. There's a good balance of egometrism and feeling like a fraud. So finding that balance, I think, will work.
Cool. Thank you, Shola. Carice, I don't know what your perspective is on this. Have you experienced imposter syndrome? Can you share what that looked like?
Yeah, I definitely have felt like a fraud many times. I remember you showed it on my bio, but like I went to business school at Harvard Business School. I graduated in 2006. And I can remember when I started in 2004, I thought there's no way, like they must have made some sort of mistake. Like there's no way that I actually got into the school. And I kept waiting for somebody to come and knock on my door and tell me, ma'am, we had a computer glitch And yeah, this is a mistake. You're not supposed to be here. So, and even, you know, on a personal front, I mean, I bought a house when I was 25. And I remember when I bought the house, I was thinking, they're not going to let me keep this. Like they must have made some sort of mistake at the bank. Like, you know, because I'm still feeling like I'm 14 on the inside, you know, like I'm like, they're not going to let me keep this. There's no way, you know. So I think for me, mine has definitely been on the fraud side, feeling as though, you know, I'm not deserving of some of these opportunities. But I'll also say, you know, I externalize some of my successes because I am a Christian. And I will say, like, sometimes I think this was God. I really do. Like, and that's one thing I'll be okay on. If y'all say I have imposter syndrome because I give credit to God, I'll be okay on that. Because I do believe sometimes his hand is in things and he's working things out and giving me, and I'm fine to give him, you know, that credit. Because I used to have people ask me all the time, like, how'd you get into Harvard Business School? I was like, do you believe in Jesus? I was like, well, you need to start, because I'm like, he's the answer. He's the way you gonna get in there, because that's how I got it. Oh, so yeah, I definitely give God some credit for sure. But can I just say one thing about what y'all were saying? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I feel like instead of having imposter syndrome, why can't we let's have a growth mindset? Do y'all know that this book called Mindset by this professor at Stanford named Carol Dweck? She talks about having a growth mindset where you are not focused on the outcome and the output and the grade and the rank and all these things, but you're focused on progress and process. And you're willing, and you believe that you can grow your IQ and that you can learn how to do things if you put the right effort in and you have the right strategies. So I feel like we could get the benefit of that hunger without the shame of the imposter syndrome and the depression and the anxiety, like Shola was talking about. You know, so that's why I encourage everybody, let's try to have a growth mindset, and let's leave the shame and the depression behind.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you with regards to a growth mindset, because if you feel like, you know, you're not good enough or you're doubting yourself, then, you know, do something about it to grow yourself. So absolutely agree with you on that.
And I think the powerful part of having conversations like this one is for people to know when the red flags are up, right? This is what I'm experiencing. Yeah. And therefore, how do I proceed with where I need to be in my career or my business or what have you, because I recognize it. So I think conversations like this are very important. Carisse, you touched on this earlier. That there might be an externality factor or factors, variables, and you mentioned, for example, gender and race. Is there a race or gender or other bias to imposter syndrome?
I mean, I think the disadvantage that those of us who are part of, you know, marginalized groups is that we don't always have the visual cues to tell us that we can do it. You know, so, you know, if you go to a company and everybody that's in senior management is really old and you're a very young person, that's probably on some levels, it might make you question yourself and say, you know, is my voice going to be heard? Am I going to be valued here? Can I be successful here? You know what I mean? So I think, and the same thing with Black, like if you're in America and, you know, all the senior leaders are white people, that also can play, I think, on your self-esteem, you know, and you get into a mode of feeling like I need to prove myself that I deserve to be here, you know, that I'm worthy of this opportunity, I can be successful. So I definitely think there's a visual element. And I mean, let's be clear, you know, if you're not a white man in the world, you haven't necessarily been uplifted in that sense, you know? And so I think that's just something that we're going to have to work doubly hard in addition to all the other doubly hard work we're doing already. We're going to have to work doubly hard to manage this mindset because we don't have the visual cues that are out here celebrating us and normalizing us and telling us that we can do it.
Right, right. What's your experience, Toela? Is there bias? And if so, what does it look like?
Bias in terms of race and gender?
Externality, any externality that could be driving.
Absolutely. it's a bit difficult because there's a comment here to say society has also almost programmed us to have this self-doubt. The most disadvantaged person in the world is a Black woman in any continent that you may go. So it's one of those things in class, in work, you're always finding that you have to prove yourself. And then when you get there, instead of acknowledging that, you know what, I'm here because I'm good, I worked hard, I'm learning, I'm just as good as the rest of my colleagues, we have this self-doubt, and then like we go back into that thing of, how did I get here? And I think it's also just society. And that's why having the mind, renewing your mind and say, no, I'm here because I'm really good. And it's not, and unfortunately in our country, it's not because I'm a Black female that I got this job. I can actually do it. So there is bias, and bias does affect the imposter syndrome that we as Black females face.
So on a related topic, very closely so, Shola, Lisa says to us on the chat, society also teaches people of color that they have to struggle in order to achieve what other races are handed on a platter. What are your thoughts on that?
So from a race perspective, so there's that external factor without a doubt. So like the cues Caris spoke about, where you go into a room, there are cues that allows you know that you're welcome, you're deserving of being here. But when you don't, representation matters basically. So where you're not represented in a room, any room you walk into, and as Toa says, Black women are, you're double minority at every point in time. You're Black, you're a woman, it's double minority at every point in time. So obviously that's also issue of feeling undeserving automatically creeps up. So when you walk into a room where you're not represented, e.g. you walk in a room where it's full of men, the first thing that comes to mind is, am I here just to fill a quota? Or a room full of white people, am I here just to fill a quota? So that self-doubt of you question yourself, am I deserving, or am I just checking a box? So that external factor around the bias, race, gender, it's everywhere. You just need to, it's self-confidence, and again, growth mindset. And as you grow, I think that as you grow, and as you grow in age, and as you grow in your career, I believe that you're able to manage these things better. And also having your, if it's that group of people, or just that one person that psychs you up every time you're feeling down. You have your girlfriends telling you, oh, you did that, and you're reminding you, and you're like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Oh, that's right. You just need people reminding you. It's validation, maybe, but we all need people to prop us up and just remind us that we're badass, basically.
Yeah. So, everyone, we're about to go into our Q&A, but before we do so, I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to gather insight from you on what topics we should be talking about going into the future. So we're going to put up a poll quickly as we ask you to please share your thoughts and views. And I see there's a few people here who have written questions in the channel, in the chat room. Can you please move your questions to the Q&A to ensure that we address them and we have a good conversation about them as we move forward. But right now I'm asking that you please share with us what are the topics that you would like to hear us talk about going into the future, so we can get you nice powerhouse conversations around them. The first one is showcasing your wins and building a brand. The other is unspoken corporate rules. Do you want to hear more about that? income negotiations, as your financial years come to an end, your performance reviews happen, or you're having performance reviews with others. What does that look like? What can and can't you do? Also, how to keep and use your power and influence in the office. Sometimes it's such a tricky and sometimes I think scary path to walk, because you don't know what you don't know in terms of power and influence. And also how to handle 360 performance reviews. You know, everyone will tell you feedback is a gift. Hey, Carice. whether you want that gift or not is entirely not up to you, right? So some environments are going to give you the feedback. So how do you handle those 360 performance reviews? So please do share with us what the next topics should be for the rest of the year. Okay, so I'm going to ask that you please share any more questions that you have. We'll start tackling some of them right now. There was a question from Hilda earlier on in our conversation, and I'll read it to you. She says, I think I have some imposter syndrome tendencies, but I don't think I am a perfectionist. So personally, I think there is a difference between the two. One has more to do with self-doubt, and the other is a confidence, but not wanting to impress. What are your thoughts? It's actually more comments, but I wanted us to have a conversation about.
Can I start with that one?
Go for it.
So thank you, Hilda, for your question and for attending tonight. I want to make it clear that not all people who have imposter syndrome are perfectionists. That's one type of imposter syndrome, right? There's 4 other types. So I'm gonna quickly go through those real quick so you can see if you fall into one of these categories. There's also the expert. So that person is all about how much or what do I know or can I do? So you're a know-it-all. And if you don't know it all, you feel shame. You feel embarrassed. You feel like a failure. The second type is a soloist. So that's the person who feels like I must do it all alone. So if I have to ask for help, I feel shame. I feel like a failure. I feel embarrassed. Okay. The fourth type of imposter syndrome is natural genius. So that's when you feel like everything you do has to be done with ease and speed. So you feel like your first attempt must be perfect. So if you struggle or you're slow, you're gonna feel shame. You feel like a failure, you feel embarrassed. And then the last type is the super mom / super student. That's where you feel like you need to be able to juggle everything with ease and perfection. And so if you can't juggle 55 things, so that's being a mom, being a wife, being a corporate, CEO, all of these things, right? You feel like you're a failure if you can't juggle all these things easily and perfectly. So I just want you to realize it's not only being a perfectionist, there are other, manifestations of imposter syndrome outside of perfectionism.
Lovely. Anyone wants to add anything else to that?
I think the other thing to help you realize if you have imposter syndrome is the big factor of being exposed. Like any minute, any day, they're gonna find out the truth. Like I'm not who they think I am. So if you've got that feeling of being exposed, then you may have imposter syndrome.
Right. Then we have another question from, I hope I pronounced your name right, Daunyani. Hi team, beautiful topic. I can fully relate to the imposter syndrome. However, I feel like this is exactly me. This has always been the way I grew up. I am a perfectionist of note, and I also think I suffer from FOMO. Is it a good or a bad thing? Danyan, when do you sleep? If you have imposter syndrome, you are a perfectionist, and you suffer from FOMO. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Ladies, what are your thoughts there? Is it good or bad that Danyana is a perfectionist and suffers from FOMO and has imposter syndrome?
So I think the perfectionist bit, that's already been, we've gone down that tunnel, so we'll pack that. The former one actually went this earlier this afternoon when I was thinking about this topic. FOMO came out, so fear of missing out, and that was one of the ways I kept thinking. Does that mean, how do you relate missing out to imposter syndrome, basically? And that's actually a tough one, and it's where I think one of the types of imposter syndrome Caris mentioned, there's actually an element of fear of missing out on there. So you want to be able to juggle everything at the same time and still be the perfect person. And that's how I was able to link it. I'm not sure if I read something around it, but there was something around fear of missing out. I'm like, how does that link with imposter syndrome? But it's that need to be able to be everything at the same time and be everywhere. Where you're not able to achieve that, then you feel like, in fact, the fear of missing out itself in that situation is the imposter syndrome. So where you can't be at all of these things, or you can't be your best self at all of those areas that you're trying to juggle, it then gives you that fear of that you're not good enough, or a mom or the corporate or whatever it is, one of those million things you're trying to juggle. So that's how I was able to link fear of missing out with imposter syndrome.
Very nice.
And I also just add one quick thing too. I also think you have to examine what is the cost of your perfectionism. Because I know for me personally, like I used to run a small business, an e-commerce business. And for the longest time, I didn't even want to make my site live because I was like, oh, there's going to be mistakes on here. And I just kept checking and rechecking before I would actually make it live. And I realized it was keeping me, my perfectionism. First of all, I'm not perfect, so that website was never going to be perfect. That's number one. Number two, I was keeping myself from learning the lessons that I could only learn from some of those mistakes and some of those errors. And so, and like Tuella mentioned too, you're procrastinating, maybe you're missing deadlines, you know, so you got to think about what's the cost of that perfectionism, because maybe it's just making you excellent, but there's usually a cost. And you got to decide, is that cost worth it, you know, for you to be perfect, quote unquote.
That's an interesting point. So just as feedback, guys, Daunyane says, even in my sleep, my mind is functional. Clearly, you're not missing out on anything, Daunyane. Even in your sleep, it's active, sharp. That's good. And then there's a comment, sorry, let's start with a question from our BI Tech. Does anybody wonder whether some people suffer from the opposite of imposter syndrome?
Yes.
Yes.
Narcissism.
It's called narcissism. Oh, wow. Okay. So, I mean, the interesting thing for me is no matter where you are in corporate or in your own business, you do get a sense of, I need to do more. And I think that's natural. And I think most people who are overachievers feel that way, right? And there are organizations that will encourage that insecure overachiever. I think there was a comment made unofficially by a contact of mine, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts, that some organizations actually want you to reach that point just before breaking point, and remain at that place to be optimally functional and efficient. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What are your thoughts? Let's start with you, Caris.
You would shoot that question over here. You're
you
not
had
slick.
The most experience, okay?
You're not slick. Yeah, I mean, I think there are companies that do play on that insecurity because they know you're going to work 10 times harder, you know, and you're going to give them 10 times more output and effort and energy. You're going to sacrifice your health, your free time, your family. So, I mean, you know, it's good for them to a certain point, but I mean, you know, once again, what's that trade-off? You know, what's going to be your reputation in the market? You know, you're going to burn people out and, you know, your productivity on some levels might drop because of that. You got to recruit new people. So there's always a trade-off to every choice that we make. Even when we think we're maybe winning in the short term, we have to start thinking long-term, and companies have to think long-term as well.
Good point. there's a question for us. So I'm going to give it to you. Hi, I think I may not have imposter syndrome, but self-doubt. How do you overcome this, especially in situations where you feel you have the right points to share, but you think you could be wrong?
I would like to hear from the person who said that. Can we
Guys,
allow them to talk? Is it done?
Yes. Ngeke, would you like to share your thoughts?
Is it Bitech admin?
No.
Who?
No. It's someone called Ngandwe. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But I think maybe let me share what I think the perspective is, and you can correct me. It's not an issue around imposter syndrome, but rather I just generally have an insecurity, and I'm not sure if my thoughts are right. And you probably overthink it to a point that it's analysis paralysis, and it just never comes out of your mouth, right?
Okay.
How do you overcome something like that?
So for me, if you have self-doubt is another trait of imposter syndrome. It is that little voice that talks in your head that tells you, you know, you can't really do it. And how do you overcome it is maybe once you start having those, can I really do it? Maybe to try and reverse the little voice to say, but what if I can? So that's one way that you can overcome a situation where you're doubting yourself. It's always a matter of, you see a job, chief data officer, executive at a bank, and you've got all the certifications and all the credentials, but then that voice comes in and says, but can you really do it? Will they like you? So when that little voice comes in, just turn it around and say, what if they like me? I think I can do it. The fact that it came up, I don't think things happen by chance. The fact that it's in my radar, maybe this is for me. So I think it's, again, just having that, being deliberate about being positive. And I know sometimes we like to be humble, and you know, we've been brought up to show humility. But sometimes you have to have a cheerleader within yourself to say, I can do this, I should give it a try. Even if it doesn't work out, it's okay. Yeah, that's what I think.
So thank you for that, Ta. I think for me, it's just a question around, is it possible to create an environment where you feel safe enough to start having conversations, so the meeting before the meeting, sort of, you know, to test things out? I don't know. What are your thoughts, Carice, about
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely, you know, a strategy. I think another thing for me is also, my personal belief is that I think we came to the earth with perfect confidence. And the people in our families, our friends, our schoolmates, our colleagues have just torn that confidence down. So for me, it's also about going back in your story and thinking about, when did somebody first start, you know, tearing my confidence down? And do I want to continue to give that person power? Because what has happened is, you've taken that negativity from that person, and now you say those things to yourself. And so I think there's also about examining, where do some of these messages come from? Do you want to continue to allow them to have that power? And then I think there's something about pausing when you get into that spiral of talking to yourself negatively, to tell yourself to just shut up. And sometimes you might even have to say it out loud. I need you to shut up, Carice, just shut up, you know? Because, and just stop the thought, as opposed to continuing to spiral. And I think the other thing is realizing that no human on earth is perfect. Even the ones you see that are super successful, that are executives, that make a whole lot of money, they've made mistakes. They were sitting right where you are right now. And sometimes I think even that silly thing that you might say that's wrong, it might help the team get to the answer quicker. It might reinforce, like, we're going in the right direction. Or maybe they'll say, oh, well, let's look at your idea. You know what I mean? So it's getting to the answer is not always a straight line. And maybe you saying that thing that you're afraid to say might help the team, you know, get to that answer quicker than, you know, they would if you hadn't said it.
Lovely.
So safe space, can you, like you said, having a safe space in the meeting room that allows you share your thoughts. Yeah, go on, Kanye.
I was actually going to ask you the next question. Kateko says to us, hi Kateko, insightful conversation, ladies. How do you support a person with imposter syndrome? I'm going to give that to you, Shola.
How do you support a person? So if it's someone you know, I think, again, it's documenting wins, helping someone walk through those wins. So what have you done? Where have you been? So just documenting your wins, helping people see the positives rather than that negative. So where they have all those negative thoughts in there, you're that voice helping walk through, and just you've achieved this. Like I said, you need cheerleaders. If you can cheer yourself up, you need external people cheering you up. So being that cheerleader, that you're able to help someone just see the good in everything, and then helping them develop that growth mindset. Understanding what your strengths, your weaknesses, and where you need to work on it. Be self-aware enough to identify your weaknesses and where you need to work on. And basically, those are the two things. I think something else that I thought about that we haven't spoken about really is putting ourselves on a pedestal, or allowing people put us on a pedestal. That's one of the big things that I've found as being a big contributor to imposter syndrome. So there's all these expectations of, someone has all these expectations of me, or maybe different people, things you have to juggle. It might be one person, it might be just different people having those things that you're having to manage. That always, I think that if you're not self-aware enough to speak to yourself, to understand what your limits are, people putting you on the self pedestal is one of the biggest, fastest way to have imposter syndrome, and also putting yourself on a pedestal that it's not realistic.
Oh, that's great insight, Shola. There's one question quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. Trade-offs at Carice, this is for you. How far can one go with that? Where does one draw the line? I'm caught in between this, as I don't want to give in to these capitalists who want us to work 24/7, whereas there is little that is in for us. Carice, where does one draw the line?
So look, I think everybody has to figure out what is your boundary. And so that's the first thing, because right, Kanye, your boundary, if the scale is a 0 to a 10, right? So 0, I'm not willing to do anything. 10, I'm willing to break my neck and I'm going to work 23 hours out of the day. Everybody has to figure out where they are willing to operate on that spectrum. And we need to respect each other, because Kanye might be willing to work 22 hours a day and I'm not. I don't judge her for that. I just know that we're different. I think the second thing is you got to figure out what's your why. Why did you come to this company? What are you trying to get out of this experience? Because yeah, you might be working long hours to satisfy that company in the short term, but you know you're serving a larger purpose, which is all about yourself. And so that's why it's important for you to know what your why is, because that will help you make peace with some of these sacrifices. But like I said, you got to figure out what's your line. Like for me, I tell people all the time, if I worked for a company that said I had to straighten my hair, I have naturally curly hair. If I work for a company that said I got to straighten my hair to be successful, I'd be like, that's where I draw the line. This is not the place for me. Right. But somebody else might go get a relaxer tomorrow and be like, okay, that's cool, I'll do that. So we all have to figure out what our boundaries are. And then when people ask us to go past them, I'm not saying you quit tomorrow, but you start looking for another job. You're not trapped anywhere. You're not a victim. You can go get another job if this isn't working. But I think having that why will help you make peace. And if you don't have it, then you're going to be bitter because you feel like you're doing this for somebody else and there's nothing in it for you.
Right. We've just had a question pop up, so I think we should answer it because I think it's important, and then we'll do the wrap-up conversation. Question from Anonymous: how do you overcome self-doubt and imposter syndrome when you have a track record of rejections and working with people who are younger than you and are executives, but you feel you have more or the same experience as them, or are just as qualified? I mean, how do you deal with overcoming all of these things when you feel that the environment is set up against you? Toaf, any thoughts?
Whew, that one is loaded. I think Okay, first of all, what gives me peace whenever I start feeling like an imposter is a lot of people actually feel that way. So if you've got that feeling, and if you went around and you started asking the people in the environment, in your environment that you perceive to be successful, you might find that most of them are feeling the same way that you're feeling. The other thing about imposter syndrome is where you compare your success to another person's success. So you feel that you're very good at what it is that you do, and then here comes another person and they're successful, and then you now start comparing to say my success, their success. So another thing I would say is stay in your lane. Your journey will come. Just continue working on your abilities and your skills, and try and not to compare your success to the other people's success, whether they're younger, whether they're older, or whether you know more than them. There's a reason why they got that job. So I would say focus on growing you, focus on your skill, and once you start focusing on that, and also building your brand also as a leader, you find you also, while you're focusing on yourself, you also grow in your job. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
Lovely.
Kanye, can I add to that real quick? I know we're almost at time. I promise.
Yeah.
Just one thing. I want to say to whoever said that, I think you also might need to understand and understand that it's not always about technical skills. You can be the person with the highest IQ, 50 letters after your name with all the degrees, but that's why I called my book Intelligence Isn't Enough, because it's not. And I think a lot of us Black people have been told that, and it's not the truth. What's going to help you advance is your relational skills, your influencing skills, your ability to get mentors and sponsors to give you those tips, those unwritten rules. That's what's going to, because if you're stuck somewhere, there's a reason that people have not progressed you. And so I think you need to be asking for some honest feedback if you haven't gotten it already, and really trying to investigate why you're stuck at the same place. Because it's, like I said, it's not just about technical skills, and that's one of the biggest lies that's ever been told to us. And yeah, I think that's really important to think about some of those softer skills, your level of self-awareness. Those are the things that are going to help you advance.
Oh, that's stunning feedback. Okay, so ladies, I'm going to ask in 1 minute each 3 things: what to start doing, what to stop doing, what to continue doing in relation to imposter syndrome. Can I start with you, Toa? Start, stop, continue.
I think you should start recognizing when you have imposter syndrome. There are a lot of tips that were given today as signs to say, oh, that could be a sign of me, having imposter syndrome. So I think the first thing is to get into that awareness and start recognizing the traits of imposter syndrome. Stop self-doubting yourself, and stop thinking that you're alone. You're not alone, and there are a lot of people that feel that way. And so just stop thinking that, oh, I'm going to be found out. Turn it around and try and think more of the positive things that you can contribute. And what I would say is continue on this search for growth. The fact that you've come to this webinar, the fact that you are interested in imposter syndrome and to come and get the nuggets, continue on that growth journey of gaining more knowledge, because the more that you know, the better you become, and you've got that self-awareness to help you grow as an individual. So that's from me.
Thank you, Toela. Shola, start, stop, continue.
So I'll say that you start reading. So things I find that where for me, when I found that, when I started having that feeling of being fraudulent, and it's fine if it's now and then, but it was continuous. I started reading books. I looked to people that were in the same situation, and that's how I found out that it was a regular phenomenon. It was everywhere. So find people that are in the same boat. So I read a good book. I read Lean In, and which was great. Read Carissa's book, which is great. What should you stop doing? Stop, seriously. Question itself, just keep questioning yourself if you're not good enough. There, accept that everyone is learning. It's a continuous, it's a cycle, and just learn to undistort it's a distortion basically. I think about imposter syndrome as a distortion. So you have to learn to undistort the distortion. So that works. And what should you continue doing? Growth mindset. That hunger to learn. Keep wanting to learn. That acceptance that everyone is on a journey and everyone is learning and everyone's learning every day. All these great people that are saying great things and doing great things. They might not know what ROA is in a meeting, by the way, to us. So they're also going to Google ROA tomorrow. So acceptance of that we all do not know these things every day will get us there. But yes, continue to seek growth and learn.
And the lovely Carice, our author and expert. What should we start? What should we stop? What should we continue to do?
Awesome. So I'll say start examining your story. I talk about that a lot in my book, is the impact of our story, how we were raised, the culture we were brought up in, and how does that impact how we show up today? And this is something you all can start doing tonight, just pulling out what are the highs and lows, the people that have influenced me, that have shaped me for good or for bad into who I am. My stop is we need to stop believing that competent or successful people didn't ask for help, have done everything alone and know everything. Because I think that's part of the reason we get into this imposter syndrome, is because we set this super high bar for those people that, you know, we think are successful, and we feel like, well, they never asked for help, or they never messed up, or they've always known everything. And it's a lie from the pit of hell. No, they have not. And they don't even know those things now, right? No person knows everything. All these people are out here asking for help. Absolutely. So, you know, don't compare yourself to this unachievable bar. And then the third thing is just continue to develop a balanced view of yourself. You're not perfect, but you also have some really amazing strengths. You got some things that nobody else can do. You got some perspectives that nobody else can bring. So try to tap into those things, but at the same time, address those areas of development, because they can pull you down. Even though you're amazing in some other areas, those areas of development can overshadow your greatness. So make sure you get those things in check, you get feedback, and you continue to, you know, modify your strategy so that you can continue to grow.
Lovely. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up, just sharing the nuggets from everyone. So we said start recognizing that you may have imposter syndrome, in whether it's yourself or other people. Just recognize it and recognize the flags. Read. Find out as much as you possibly can about the topic and how you can grow yourself. Also, examine your story. Lovely insight from Maria. Clarity for yourself about where am I, who am I, where am I going, how am I going to get there? And in that reflective process, you're able to recognize some of the issues that may arise and how you ask for help. And what do we stop doing? You're not alone. Stop thinking that you are. We have conversations such as this one, and I'm sure there are many others on the interwebs. So you're not alone. Find out more. Stop doubting yourself. I think there's enough naysayers in the world. I think your role should be around how do I make the best version of me come to life, and what are the tools available and the toolkits available. And stop believing that competent people, competent people didn't ask for help. My goodness, that is powerful. So I think it ties in quite nicely with that. You're actually not alone. So think about it differently, have a different perspective. And what do we continue to do? Growth mindset. I think what everyone was saying is linked very much to that. Continue to grow. And Carice said a lovely insight, shared a lovely insight. You need to modify your strategy as you go. So hopefully this is the start of a conversation with yourself. and others around imposter syndrome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We look forward to seeing you again in a month's time. Thank you so much, Carice. It's been an amazing conversation. Everybody, go and get Carice's book, Intelligence is Not Enough, and we will wish you farewell. Goodbye.
Bye.